Attention bobsled riders! You will soon be embarking on a thrilling podcast down the icy slopes of the Matterhorn. So please remain seated, keeping your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the bobsled at all times. Auf Wiedersehen! Hello, Yodelers! We are the Matterhorn Yodelers. I am your head Yodeler today, Peter, with my fellow Yodelers,
Jackie
and
Japheth.
And today, this is almost kind of like a piggyback discussion we had a couple weeks ago where we talked about the secrets of Disneyland. Well, the secrets, which is a great episode. I recommend all of you to go back and listen to that one. One of the things that definitely made my list of secrets of Disneyland that people normally notice are the windows on Main Street. And
aren't they so clean?
They do a great job cleaning.
Windex and newspaper.
Well, that's it, guys. We just want to talk about the clean windows on Main Street. No, so the windows on Main Street are very important because if you look at them, they usually have some sort of weird business name with a random person's name on it. And so to the normal person that doesn't know a lot about the history of Disney and things like that, it's just random names. But actually, these are actually real people who actually contributed to the park. And this goes throughout the entirety of the world. So all the windows on Main Street, in Disneyland, Disney World, Tokyo, Paris. I think there's exceptions in Paris where I think they have Disney characters on their windows on Main Street as well. But you can find these on any Main Street in the world, even in places that aren't on Main Street, like Frontierland or Toontown or whatnot. If there's a random window that's up in the air, up high, there's a good chance there might be a name on it. And so there are requirements to get your own window on Main Street.
What are the requirements? I didn't know. I thought they were just people that they were
So you have to be retired.
Okay.
You have to be retired to get your own window. It's given to the people who only the people at the highest level of service / respect and achievement, and it has to be agreed upon with park management and Imagineering. Both park management and the Imagineering people in charge of that have to agree that these people deserve a window on Main Street. Mostly because the Imagineers are the ones that design all the windows on Main Street. So today we're each going to talk about a few names that you may not have necessarily heard of, people you may not know, but have contributed in big ways to the theme parks, to the Disney theme parks,
and your life,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Not necessarily in the park, but also in the Disney company, too.
Absolutely.
It doesn't just have to be specifically to a Disneyland park.
And a fun little factoid that adds to the windows as well is as you're walking down Main Street, the windows act as if the opening credits to your day at Disneyland, where you can see the people that helped create your experience.
Ooh, like the old movies.
Mm-hmm. Correct, like the old movies.
That's so
yes.
cool.
It's all thought out really well, isn't it?
Red carpet, and clean windows.
Yeah.
Boy,
the clean windows, the most important part. Windex.
Windex.
Not a sponsor.
Please sponsor us.
Unless you want to be.
Wing. All right, so I'm going to start with mine. So my window, it says this window can be located above the Market House, which is if you drink coffee, it's the Starbucks on Main Street. So if you look up high, on the second floor, you'll see a window that says Orange Grove Property Management with the name Ron Dominguez. We'll care for your property as if it were our own. And you might ask yourself, who's Ron Dominguez and why do I care?
I actually stumbled upon this name for the secrets.
That's right.
And Peter, you were like, nope, I got this one for another day. All right.
That's right. This story I'm going to share was going to make it into our secrets episode, but I wanted to save it for this one because it relates to Ron Dominguez. So this story goes back to 1896. That's a while ago.
That's pre-Disney.
That's pre-Disney
That's
being alive.
That's VD.
Before Walt Disney was alive, okay? He was just a twinkle in his parents' eye. You know? That's all he was. And this was Ron Dominguez's grandparents owned this 10-acre lot in Anaheim, California, of orange groves. And there they got married. And as a wedding gift, they planted a tree called the Dominguez tree. The Dominguez palm. Okay? And so as time went on, the grandparents passed and they left it to their daughter, Ron Dominguez's mother, and her kids to live on. And then in 1954, she decided to sell the land to Walt Disney to build Disneyland. So, and part of the arrangement, part of the deal, was that they keep that tree, that they don't demolish that tree, because it represents, her parents' marriage. And so as of today, and it's still located today in the park, it is the oldest living thing inside the Disney park. You might ask yourself, where is this tree? Can I see this tree? Is it somewhere buried back in the bushes behind Frontierland or in the Jungle Cruise? No, you can walk up to it. You can even touch the tree. But don't. No. It's located, if you listen to our Secrets episode, it's actually right across the way from the Little Man of Disneyland tree. So if you were going to, let's say, get a fast pass for Indiana Jones Adventure, you walk up, it kind of goes into the Jungle Cruise building. Right before you enter that building, there's a giant palm tree that's right in front of you, and that is the Dominguez tree.
How cool.
Oh.
Yes. And the house where Ron grew up was actually moved. It was located where you might know as Pirates of the Caribbean, New Orleans Square. It was moved backstage in between Tomorrowland and Main Street as a management office. So, and you might ask yourself, what does this have to do with Ron Dominguez? Well, Ron Dominguez grew up
In Disneyland.
at Disneyland before Disneyland.
Oh, yeah, at Disneyland.
Yeah.
Before there was Disneyland, he was there.
He was there. He grew up there. Okay? He walked the grounds before there was a castle. Well, again, his mom sold the land in 1954, which was 1 year before the park opened.
That blows my mind. Like,
Right?
I've done it in a year.
They built Disneyland basically less than a year. And Ron was in college. He was at University of Arizona. And and he came home to California for summer break, and he decided to get a job at Disneyland, which he actually was there opening day as a ticket taker.
How cool.
Wow.
Right? He was an original cast member opening day. His first day of work was July 13th, 1955, which, of course, we know the dedication was on July 17th. So 4 days before Disneyland opened, he was working there. So he is an original cast member. And then when the summer ended, he was going to go back to school, but management talked to him and says, hey, why don't you get on the ground floor on here? And within a year, he had actually been trained on every single attraction inside Disneyland.
Whoa.
That's cool.
Every single one.
There weren't that many, though, when it
There
first
wasn't as
opened.
many as there are today,
still
but there
a
was
lot.
still
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Like, when you get trained, or when you get positioned there, you're in an area. So when I was at Disney World, it was like Liberty Square and Adventureland. And so you'd only get trained in those lands unless you transfer and you maintain your qualifications. So, I mean, to get trained at all the attractions, that's pretty
Yes, he got
awesome.
trained at all the attractions. He even got to play Davy Crockett as well, which he did not enjoy. He did not like that job, and he quickly wanted to transfer out to that one. But he did get to play as Davy Crockett in the park. So, like, he got to do attraction, ticket taking, and even play a character.
Jack of all trades.
He was.
He was friends with the character. Wink, wink.
Wink, wink, friends with Davy Crockett. Right. So shortly after that, let's see here. After about a year, after his time doing all this attraction, he was actually got promoted to supervisor of Main Street. Just a year after he had been working there, he got promoted to supervisor of Main Street.
It's pretty impressive.
Right? Then after that, in 1957, he moved on to be supervisor of Frontierland, Adventureland, and to Tomorrowland, all the way up to 1962, which then, at 1962, he got promoted to be a supervisor of the west side of the park. Wow. So that's basically Tomorrowland, Main Street, and Fantasyland. That's what he was in charge of.
He was probably really, like, close to Disney.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. That was one thing that a lot of the cast members and people who remember him, they say, like, if there was anyone that knew exactly what Disneyland was about, it was Ron. Like, he literally, like, a lot of the habits and things that you see cast members, how they act and treat guests, that came from Ron. Everyone saw Ron as this, he was always happy, he always did the best thing for the guest, to making sure that their experiences were the best. He was a very humble person that people would praise him, and he's like, he did not like praise. He's not a person that's like, he likes to toot his own horn. But yeah, he was very well liked within the company, not just from the cast members who worked the front lines, but also the executives. Later on, he got promoted he moved to Director of Operations of Disneyland in general. In 1974, he became the Vice President of Disneyland and Chairman of the Park Operating Committee. So he's pretty much in charge of Disneyland itself at that point. In 1990, he got named Executive Vice President of Walt Disney Attractions West Coast. So he was actually part of the team that helped pave the way for the construction of Disney's California Adventure, back when they were trying to figure out what that park was going to be before. I think the decision to turn it into California Adventure came after he had left, but he was part of the team that helped pave the way to build a second theme park on the West Coast.
Or depave.
Depave, that's right. Yeah. Which he retired in 1994 after 39 years of service within the company.
Almost got that 40-year pin on that.
He almost got that 40-year pin. In 2000, he was recognized as a Disney legend. And actually, he had just passed away January 1st of this year, 2021. So he literally just passed away.
Wow. Well, it's good that we get to, like, remember him. And,
yeah.
like,
that's one of
be a part of Disney history like this.
And he had a nickname, and his nickname was Mr. Disneyland, because he was literally the picture of Disneyland. Like, he was the face of Disneyland when Walt wasn't there.
So he picked up, like, he was pretty much, like, he picked up the slack. Because you hear in other departments when Disney left, there was a vacuum.
Yes.
Of, like, where do we go with this?
What do we do?
Yeah, for sure. And so it's good that, like, Ron was there.
He was.
You know, he just, like, hey, we got to continue this. And it's one thing you don't hear about the Disney parks struggling after Walt left. You hear about it in all the other departments.
Animation, movies, and all of that. Yep.
It's cool because, you know, not only was, like, he was, you know, continuing Walt's footsteps, but was also, like, honoring his family because this was his family's land.
Yep. And yep. He's got ties to that land in general, and, you know, next time you find yourself walking down Main Street, take a look at his window and give him a mental thanks for all the work that he's done.
Yeah. I mean, it's all gone through him and his family and his heritage. He's rooted there with his tree.
Yeah.
All right, I'll stop.
All right. Jackie, why don't you give us who's the person that you're going to be, What's the window that you're going to be talking about?
So I have Imagineer Claude Coates.
Never heard of him.
Like you're wearing a coat, right?
Still haven't heard of him.
So he actually has 2 windows at Disneyland.
Whoa.
He does.
Yes. So he has. I do not know the locations of them for sure. I think one is above the Emporium, and it is like a big and tall store because he was known as one of the taller Imagineers. And then there's another window. It's called Claude, like a coat company, and so fitting last name Coates, and he has a coat business.
So how does he get 2 windows? Do they
Well,
talk about that?
I don't know how.
It might be. He might have another window at Disney World. I think that's
No,
what it is.
so
Is it? Does it say
he
Disneyland?
has 2 at Disneyland, 1 at Disney World.
There we go.
Fair. I'm gonna take it down.
Yeah.
Well, he definitely earned his windows.
How did he earn his window?
So he was with Disney for 54 years.
Okay, so it's like one short of the 55-year plan.
And so he joined the Walt Disney Studio as a background painter for movies.
Oh, cool.
So like, one of his first like background skits, or cartoon paintings he was just in charge of painting all the roof shingles. And it's just kind of funny how he had to get he had the lowest brunt of the work job, but then he moved up and worked on the background of Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Lady and the Tramp, The World of Disney, Fantasia 2000. So he's a big artist, and all of those classic movies you've seen, his work is in those.
Wow.
And so
Major contributor
to all of the art in those classic movies. And so when Disneyland was getting built, or as they were building Disneyland, he was in charge of working on just the model of Mr. Toad's ride, and how that was going to look as a model. And the other Imagineers that were in charge of the project was talking to Walt, saying it's not going to be done in time, we have got too much work. And Walt just points at him and go, "You're in charge now," and walked away.
Walt is famous for doing that.
Oh, totally.
He's throwing people under the bus, and they get it done.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily him throwing people under the bus. It was him knowing the potential of the people that he put in charge.
I don't know, man. I think he's like, here you go. And it's not like he's running them over, but it's all like, I'm going to throw you in front of the bus.
He did.
And you better move quickly.
He made sure, he put the people in charge and put fire on them to make sure that you have to get this done.
Because he was the one driving the bus. He was going to run them over. No.
So that was kind of his way into becoming an Imagineer in the parks. And so he helped design, I would say, most of the dark rides in Fantasyland. So he, of course, did Mr. Toad's World Ride. That was his first project.
I'd ask him, why did he come up with that story?
Well, it came from the animated short first, before the movie. Before it came out to the theme parks.
Okay.
That's a whole other story about
I was like,
that story alone about that short / movie came into being. That's another crazy story.
He designed Alice in Wonderland, and he, was head on that project, and, the ride vehicle is like the caterpillar. So originally it was supposed to be the cards, the queen's,
So you're gonna write a card?
deck of cards kind of thing.
Yeah.
It would be one of the card characters. But Walt goes, "No, well, how about a caterpillar?" And now it's a caterpillar.
Dang. It's good because it's a very iconic like vehicle that comes up.
It
It's
really
like Dumbo. It's like, oh, you're driving Dumbo, and then there's like, oh, I'm in the Caterpillar. This is
and basically they had to get a patent for that ride vehicle for Alice in Wonderland, and so Claude filed for the patent, and then he had to sell it back to Disney for $1.
so if you want your job back. They muscled him. Those lawyers are good.
Let's see here. He did the Grand Canyon diorama.
Funny story about that. So the Grand Canyon diorama, for those that don't know, that's the diorama that you see riding the train from Tomorrowland to Main Street. You see a diagram of the Grand Canyon. When we went on that guided tour, I was like trying to think of a good question to ask the tour guides, because for the most part the tour guides were telling me stuff for the most part I already knew, so I was trying to like maybe I can get some information I didn't know. And one of the questions was, who painted the mural in the Grand Canyon mural? And they didn't know the answer. And it wasn't until like a podcast that I listened to like a year ago where they said, yeah, that was Claude Coates that painted the Grand. I was like, I've got an answer.
He also worked on Carousel Progress, It's a Small World. He worked on Pirates of the Caribbean, and his name is on the ride. So I don't know if you were aware. So in the courtyard, it's like the only attraction, I believe, that has the name of all of the Imagineers that worked. There's in the courtyard. There's like a little plaque that has all the names of the Imagineers that worked on the attraction.
Oh, cool!
And Claude is on is on there.
Oh, wow!
And then he worked on Adventure Through Inner Space, Haunted Mansion, the Submarine Voyage, the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
You name it, he probably worked on it for a while.
Yeah, he did Horizons, World of Motion, Universe of Energy, so he worked on a lot of Tomorrowland.
Well, that was Epcot.
Oh,
That's Epcot.
and Epcot.
I was like, Horizon's what was replaced by Mission Space, because people come up to be like, bring Horizon back, and you're like, go away.
So he worked a lot at Disneyland, and then when Disney World started, he worked a lot in Epcot. And kind of that's how he has a window at Disney World as well. And then he also worked in Tokyo parks as well, and a little bit at Euro Disney, but not as much.
I'm sure he was getting ready to retire.
He was getting,
yeah. So he then retired, and interesting fact, he kind of was Tony Baxter's mentor.
Who's Tony Baxter?
Tony Baxter.
Oh, maybe we'll save that for another day. If you don't know who Tony Baxter is, we'll have a discussion about Tony Baxter.
But Tony Baxter is a pretty big Imagineer.
Think of Big Thunder Mountain, Indiana Jones, Splash Mountain, Star Tours.
Big guy.
He's a big name when it comes to Imagineering. Now for modern Disney parks.
Okay.
Which is interesting because, like, you see in Tony's work, he brought, like, the submarine back, which is an ode back to Claude. Splash Mountain, which is, like, Song of the South, which Claude worked on in the artwork, and so...
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
He brought a lot, and, I watched a video of someone interviewing his son, Claude's son, and it was like, he talked about how, Claude always, like, was uplifting Tony and appreciated of his work, and that's how Tony got to be such a big influencer in the Disney company. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that was great.
Yeah.
Did you have more?
No, he passed away in 1992.
Right when you were born.
Yeah.
Well, that was
Not
great.
to date you.
No.
Sorry. But yeah, I thought, Claude Coates was a very influential person in Disney history, and I thought it was very important. And I'm glad you shared that with us. Like, I have nothing but respect for the work that he has done that we still enjoy today.
For sure. Yeah. You go to the parks and you forget that there's art all around you. You're just like, oh, it's a theme park. You have no, go to another theme park and there's no art. There's rides. But Disneyland is a masterpiece from when you walk in and
everywhere you look.
Everywhere you look, even the garbage cans.
Even the garbage cans, that's right. All right, Japheth, why don't you give us your window?
All right, so I have Javier Atencio, or AKA X. And the thing is, his name was Francis Xavier or Javier, and it was just easier to be called X. And on his Disney badge, I saw in a picture, there was just an X in the middle of the badge, and I was like, that's so cool!
I've always said, having the letter X as a middle name would be such, the coolest thing.
I'm Professor X. I'm pull some X-Men in here.
Yeah. I actually thought about if I ever got a PhD and I was a professor, I'd get a wheelchair and change my name to X. School of Mutants 101. Oh, if you're not in the right class, please leave. Something silly like that. But an X-Men himself, he is a Disney legend. He is an animator and an Imagineer. I'm going to refer to him as X. He is best known for writing the scripts and lyrics for Pirates of the Caribbean and Haunted Mansion. But before he got there, his journey started with a young man who was from a small town in Colorado. He moves to Los Angeles in 1937 and attends, I can't even say it, it's an art institute where actually 3 of the Big Nine, is that what they were called? The
9 old men.
The 9 old men, yes, the 9 old men. So 3 of the 9 old men went to the same art institute, and X got a job when he was 18 at Disney because the professor who was working for Disney at the time at the art institute goes, hey, you need to submit your portfolio. You've got some good stuff. And he went into the interview, and this is based off his interview that somebody interviewed him with. He says, he went in there, he saw 3 other people, and he was like, I didn't get the job. And they called him back and said, you got the job. And he said he ran home 4 miles saying, I got the job. And, he was paid $12 a week back in 1937. So 18 years old, and you are at the dream job. You are at Disney Studio. Being
an animator was a dream job because that was an industry that didn't really exist if you wanted to make money.
No.
At that time period. Not like nowadays where you can get a job if you're an animator nowadays. Back then, and get paid for it,
you had to go to Hollywood, and that's what he did. And he was so good that you imagine being 18 and you're working at Disney, And of course he wasn't head animator. He started ground level as an apprentice and working his way in. And, he first saw his work on the screen for the premiere of Pinocchio, and he said his favorite thing was to watching the audience and the reaction. That's what drove him and his journey for working at Disney. And so he will continue that mantra or that kind of feeling, that fuel to drive him as he goes through. He goes, in an interview, he goes, I started as an apprentice animator with Willie Rodman on Pinocchio, and then I worked on Dumbo, and next came the war, and then I was gone for 4 years. And so World War II happens, and he, took on the call, and he joined. And he went and worked as a photo intelligence. He worked in Greenland, and he joined the Air Corps, and rose to the rank of major. So he had his dream job, but he left it, as most young men and even actors at the time took the call to fight the war. And so he comes back from the war, not too much action in Greenland, Gotta give respects to the photo intel guys. I used to work with those guys, and I, got a lot of respect where they're just looking at film, and you gotta pick out your targets, and so that's really cool that he took the call, and now he's back in 1945, and he was very fortunate. He calls studios, hey, I'm back, and they're like, all right, you've left your job right there, come back in. So how cool is that? You leave, and then you come back, and your job's there, and
well, I imagine there were a lot of openings everywhere.
yeah.
For jobs, so.
And he goes, but it was tough because there were some that stayed there, and they were now full animators, and he had to take on his old job. So it wasn't like, oh no, I've got all the experience. No, he lost 4 years of your career doing so, but it doesn't slow him down. He starts doing small animated features throughout. You may know him because he did some work in, like, I'm No Fool. We grew up listening to that, and Mickey Mouse Club.
No siree.
And then he, in 1960, he provided the memorable stop-motion sequences in Disney features, such as Parent Trap. We discussed that. We were like, this is weird, and with the little cherub babies going around. And then Babes in Toyland and Mary Poppins. And I was like, there's a stop motion in there, and it's the toys.
Yep.
And so he said he used the same toy soldiers from Babes in Toyland and Mary Poppins. And so I was like, oh, cool. He said he worked with Bill Justice, and I worked together on the stop motion film with Walt assigned us to do the scenes, tidying up the nursery. Bill was really good at the stop motion stuff. He had done the toy sequences in Babe in Toyland, and we used some of the same toys. And he says, like, it was very frustrating because you were going and they're like, did we move that piece? No? Okay, we got to do everything back again. And he goes, it was tedious. He was like, I didn't like it. And
Would imagine.
It was really hard. And so it's 1964. Walt's going to pass in 1966. Is that right? Or when does he pass?
Oh my gosh, no. Somewhere around there. Sure.
But he's going to pass.
I think it was 7.
67?
I think it was 67.
Yeah, and so at the request of Walt Disney, Walt's calling you out, and he goes, hey, you're transferring to WED, which was the Imagineer, the early name for it. And he worked on the Primeval World diorama at Disneyland. So that gets his way into Imagineering, taking that animation art into Disneyland. And from there, he's called in, and he was like, Walt tells him, hey, I want you to write the script for Pirates of the Caribbean. Okay. Again, I see Walt going like, hey, I'm throwing you in front of this bus, and I'm going to make sure you do really well, because I'm going to run you over. And not that Walt ran over people, but he threw people in situations, like you said, where I believe you could do it. But, like, how would you feel like, I'm an animator, and, like, you're going to write the script? Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have people that can do that?
That was a big thing with him during the construction of Disneyland. Like, he didn't hire engineers or anyone like that.
No specialists.
No specialists. He called his animators, the people he trusted that could tell a story, because that's what was important about Disneyland, was to tell a story, and no one could do that better than his animators.
That's very true. It really is about telling a story. So eventually, like I said, Walt sent him there, and then he was kind of like in limbo, waiting around there. And it started off, Walt said, you're going to do the script for Pirates, and so he just writes the scene for the auctioneers. And Walt goes, that's fine, keep going. And he's like, okay, so he kept going. And there was a point where he goes, probably should have, like, a melody here. And so he recites this to Walt, and he thought it was a great idea, and he goes, okay, he'll send it off to the Sherman Brothers and they'll write it. He goes, no, we'll write it, we'll get it to George Burns. And so he comes up with the Yo-Ho, Yo-Ho for Pirates of the Caribbean. So, I mean, again, animator, Imagineer, songwriter. Okay, I'm going to write songs.
Probably one of the most iconic songs in theme park history ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He created the theme song for Pirates. There was no, like, oh, let me go look at the pirate hymn book and let's find a good hymn that everyone can sing to. No, he wrote the theme song for Pirates.
Yep.
And it's just like, holy cow, that's just amazing. And you know, this transitions, he does well, and they're like, okay, you know, a lot of people from Pirates transition to Haunted Mansion from the projects, or work very similar. And so he goes on to working at the Haunted Mansion. He does the script there, and he co-writes Grim Grinning Ghosts.
Yep.
So again, now I've got the theme song for Haunted Houses now. Like, you can't help but think that, and he helped co-write this. It's just like, I was reading, it's like, this is amazing. This guy is just like, alright, I'm going to go. And they're like, what a great song, you know? So he worked for Mark Davis and for trying to get the ride, because he's the father of the Haunted Mansion. People look at it. He worked with him, but Mark Davis gets a lot of the attention for it. And so with that, he helped him like with the script writing and all that. And I worked with Paul Frees for the script, because he's the ghost host. And so the script that you're hearing is the ghost host as they go through on the ride. So when your doom buggy, you know, closes and you hear that voice in your vehicle, that's Paul Frees, and he gives, you know, that he worked with X on this. Next, you didn't know, but so when you're riding the Haunted Mansion, you'll hear X's voice in the casket.
Oh.
Let me out of here. So you'll hear his voice in there, so that was a little contribution.
He's forever in the park.
He's there. You know, he's there in a grave too. He has a tombstone. His tombstone is, I can't even say, requisite Francis Xavier, no time off for good behavior, rest in peace. And then in an interview, someone goes, do you remember how the tombstones came to be? And he goes, yeah, I came up with all the little captions there. So all those little witty captions, he wrote that for his friends. They're all, you know, engineers. And so you can look online and they have like the different ones. So like the windows, the tombstones, or at Pirates, there's name on there. They leave their marks on their artwork, and you know, the tombstone for the Haunted Mansion are that artwork. So these things are very clever, but they're country. I think Claude has one there at the Haunted Mansion.
Probably.
Yeah, I think so. You know, from there, after that, he contributes with various rides. If You Had Wings, I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, it's where Buzz Lightyear is now at Disney World.
Okay. And then you had Space Mountain, and at Magic Kingdom, Spaceship Earth, and World of Motion, the Mexico Pavilion. So he continues his career with the Imagineers, animator to into the parks. He is infused into the legacy of it. And as he said, he goes throughout his career, X always said his reward, as it was in Pinocchio, is still the audience reaction. So imagine you go to the park and you just watch people come off rides and you're just like, they just experienced something I made. And that's kind of really cool, you know, like, not really cool. It is cool. Like, not often you have your job and someone looks at your work and they're like, wow, that was amazing, right? No, they're just like, oh, thank you. And then they move on. It's just very... So
see the smiling faces if they get off your attraction.
And so, I mean, you can't think of a better job than what he was doing and contributing to the Disney legacy with that. And so he goes off and retires in 1984, but he continues as a consultant, which it sounds like he just like, I show up once in a while.
Pretty much.
I bring in the donuts and I bring in some good stories. And that's what he said. He brings in the stories of Walt. And,
what it pretty much is.
You know, and you get a really sense of an interview where he talked about Walt and his, you know, influence in his career, because he said one time he was in the hallway and Walt's like, hey, X, and he was like, he knows who I am. You know, he was still starstruck, and he goes, and it was, and for all of them, you know, when he passed away, when Walt, you know, an Imagineer told him, and it was December 15th or 17th, but it was the time when, you know, when Walt died, he always got his Christmas tree, and he's like, you know, I'm just going to get the Christmas tree. And he goes, when he got home, he put up the Christmas tree, and he said he just cried. because it felt like he lost his father. And it's so interesting to hear that with other, other stories with Walt and passing. It's like how a man has that influence of, he was a father to him. And you think, X was 18 when he's hired, and he's working closely with Walt for like 30 years, and he is a father to him in a way with his career and mentor. And he says when he goes on, after like Walt passed, he would be that kind of voice going, well, Walt would do this with the new people and kind of let Walt's voice or mentality move on through those who knew him so long, and go like, Walt would probably do this, or, help try to continue, because we talk about that, like, there was a chaos where there was that vacuum of, like, that executive decision of, like, are we, what are we doing, or how are we doing this, and that kind of creates that chaos where it wasn't quite Walt, but, it did get the job done, and these guys were the bridge to, creating a new identity for Disney and the Disney company, I believe. And so he was asked, he goes, do you feel like you have a part of the Walt Disney legacy? And he goes, I do. I think it was one of the happiest things in my life when I go to the big cartoon studios in the sky and I could say I was a part of this. And I was like, that's really cool. And he goes, one quick story. He goes, one time when I was at Balboa Island, there was some kids out on the bay rowing around, and guess what I heard? Yo ho, a pirate's life for me. And it's like, how cool that you took something and it was meant for a park, and it transcends the park into like sea life. And I think it's so appropriate, that yes, X, of course deserves a window, but like, he deserves the recognition of the podcast and those, just to know the cultural influence of this man's life and his achievements in his career, with our own lives. And so, thank you, Peter, for picking up this this individual for me to share, because I worked at the Haunted Mansion and Grim Ghosts, heard it all the time. I still love it. And just to know that, like, a person that was not a songwriter is, an animator, is pulled and creates influential art for timeless, and it will be there forever, and so will his window. And so I had to look up what it says, but his window is located over the Mad Hatter's hat shop next to Great Moments of Lincoln. So you'll see like the Mad Hatter hat, and the window will say the musical quill, lyrics and librettos, and it'll say by X Atencio, and there's a quill and a little ink there.
I think I know. I remember seeing that.
And so, again, he's the jack of all trades. One of reason why Walt picks those men. It's just you can do it, and they did do it, and they did it great. Mm-hmm. And so I think that really, that sums up him, and that really sums up what we're trying to convey with these windows of great men and great men and women and their achievements with these windows. And I hope we can continue to do more history bits, because I learned a lot from this.
Yeah, I know. It was a great privilege for me, because at one point I actually got to see X in person at the D23 event, and to actually hear him share the story about how he came up with Yo Ho. That was great. Actually hearing it come from his own mouth. So, yeah, I loved doing this. These little these people, because my co-host here asked me to pick them out because they didn't know who they should be picking.
I didn't want to pick the best custodial person for 65 years, and we're starting off windows with boy, he could sweep Disneyland in 15 minutes. That's great pick,
But I wanted to pick people that I felt had a major impact on people's lives, and where I feel like we're definitely going to come back and do this, because I enjoy learning more and more about all these different people, and I hope you guys too, as well, enjoy this.
Look them up, get more information. Yes. Their interviews are timeless. They share stories that are great and insight to time period where you're not going to get in books, or you could get them in books, but like just to hear it from their own words of the time periods that we just don't get to hear about as much. It's great. I liked it.
So let us know what you thought. Maybe is there a window that you don't know anything about and you want us to talk about it? Send it our way. You can email us at matterhornyodelers@gmail.com. You can message us on Facebook and Instagram. We also are on YouTube. If you prefer to listen to us on YouTube, you can even leave us a review on a variety of different podcast sites that allow that. Feel free to do that. Write a review. We'd really appreciate that. Once again, thank you for listening, and until next time, Auf Wiedersehen. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Matterhorn Yodelers. Please remember, before your bobsled comes to a complete stop, to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And remember...
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.